Hello, I'm Krista West of Avlea Folk Embroidery, and this is the February FlossTube. You have to bear with me a bit. I am still trying to figure out what's the best way to video in my new space. So I'm playing around with different things so that you can see better. So, if you're new here, I'll just give you all the things. I'm Krista West. I love folk embroidery. I live for folk embroidery. I pretty much eat, sleep, breathe folk embroidery. I got my start doing it from Greek folk embroidery, and now I've expanded and I research and design with taking my inspiration from the folk embroidery traditions of quite a few places now. If you want to follow along on my creative journey, I would say that one of the best ways to do that is to actually sign up for my emails at the Avlea website. It'll be in the notes below. The weekly email, I take a lot of time and energy each week crafting a very, what I think is a nice email. I like to have like a bunch of photos of embroidery so that you can just be sort of inspired or just enjoy seeing the photos of beautiful folk embroidery. If I have new releases or products, I'll feature them there. But then I always end with kind of a paragraph or two about kind of what's going on in my creative journey. I am really concerned about people's attention, and I want to be intentional about your attention. And so if you sign up for the emails, just know that I only send them on Saturday mornings. That's the only time I send them. I just have decided that I don't want to be flooding you with emails. I know I don't like that when a company does that to me, or an organization, and I don't want to do that. So I usually just send the one email a week. Okay, maybe once or twice throughout the year, I might send it like one extra if there's like a special sale or something, or if I'm about ready to run out of something, I'll let you guys know. But the emails are great. You can also follow along on Instagram, and I usually post about 4 times a week on Instagram, different things. Recently on Instagram, I have some really fun reels about the new Even Weave Easy Fringe Finish. So I'll be talking a little bit about that today. Where did I put my other one? Oh, I set it down behind my table. I'm going to have to go grab it in a minute. And then I actually just recently I realized I put a lot of time and effort into my social media posts and into getting great photos and things like that. And I want to make sure that people that are interested in folk embroidery find me. And so I realized that I wasn't being particularly organized about how I was approaching social media. So I started using a new scheduling tool. And so now I'm playing around with posting to Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and my Google profile. So we'll see how that goes. I'm learning a lot. And I will say I had a wonderful customer service experience. I got into the social media scheduler. It's a company called SocialBee. And I got in and I could not figure out how anything worked. It just was really visually overwhelming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't figure this out. I'm too old. I'm too dumb. I can't do this. So I had a little bit of a fit and I was like, fine, I'm not going to do the trial. So I wrote their company and I said, okay, I thought I could do this, this, and this, and I can't figure out how to do that on your platform. So I need to cancel my trial and, have you unlink my accounts. I got the nicest, you guys are going to love this story. I got the nicest email from Julia at SocialBee, who turns out she's Romanian and she knows all about folk embroidery. And she gave me this really good tip on a folk embroidery museum in Romania. So, of course, after we geeked out about folk embroidery a little bit, she took the time to make me I'm thinking of it now as my old person 4.5-minute video on how I was supposed to use it. And I was just missing a couple of key things I was supposed to do. And I was turning things on that weren't supposed to be turned on at the right time. All the things. I'll tell you, we're just kind of a little sidebar here. If you are over the age of, 40, 45, and you decide to get into the world of social media, it is a constant exercise in humility. So for all of you who might be younger and are just getting into folk embroidery or just getting into crafting, and you see people like me and you're like, oh my gosh, she's been embroidering for decades, which I have. But you know what? This is what I grew up with. I grew up with this, with embroidery. I grew up with this stuff. This was my technology. And So for me, the things that, like, there's things for me, I would just encourage you, because there's things for me that are incredibly difficult, like social media, that are very easy for you. And I want to challenge myself to like learn those things so that I can be, part of the conversation and share things with people. But I'll tell you, there's parts of it that are really challenging for me because I'm older and it's not my native language. The internet is always going to be in some way a foreign language that I had to learn to speak in my 30s. So I encourage you that if you are new to crafting, or if you're even just, maybe you're a seasoned crafter and you're going through a stretch where you're like, nothing is working, just take heart. Sometimes we go through those seasons and it is really good for us. It's good for our brain. I have to keep reminding myself that like learning all of this new stuff is so good for my brain. So if you're there and you're like, how does she make it look so effortless? I am looking at your social media going, how do they make it look so effortless? So just know that we all have like our things that like we're good at. I just wanted to give that little pep talk because that was kind of where I was the last couple of weeks. But I'm excited to be able to be using the photos and the designs and kind of sharing them a little bit more broadly. So that's kind of exciting. So that's all the social media stuff. Okay, we really got to start talking about folk embroidery because I'm actually a little bit I'm on a schedule today. So I can't ramble on forever. I'm actually giving an EGA lecture. This is a really busy week for me for presentations. I'm doing a EGA lecture in just a little bit. I guess I can give a plug for that. If you have a knitting guild or a stitching guild or an EGA guild, or EGA, is Embroiderers Guild of America. And there are chapters all over the United States. And I pretty often now do lectures. I lecture on things like Mediterranean folk embroidery. That's actually what I'm lecturing on today, and like its origins and what it looks like and all the kind of fun art history background to it. And then I also, I've lectured to knitting guilds. I would love to even lecture to stitching guilds, quilt guilds, anybody that wants to hear about folk embroidery. And then later this week, I'm actually going to be featured on the Craft Industry Alliance's Instagram live event on Thursday. That's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, noon Eastern Standard Time. So that'll be kind of exciting. It's always kind of exciting to be featured on anything having to do with the Craft Industry Alliance. So what is the Craft Industry Alliance? It is a professional development organization for crafters who own small businesses. It has been an incredible resource for me over the last several years as I have been learning how to run Avlea. It's incredible group of people. Very encouraging. It's just been so nice for me to know other people out there that have the same challenges and have new ideas. We share ideas. I'm in a mastermind group with other craft businesses. And it's been really, really fun. I feel like it's really stretched me professionally to make Avlea like as good as it can be. So that's been great. Craft Industry Alliance. So that's Thursday morning. And then, okay, so let's get to like talking about embroidery because that's enough of me nattering on. So, in the biggest news for Avlea is, I got to go grab I'm going to grab the other one so that I don't forget to show you all three of them. The February release was a trio of bit kits. And the first one is Mediterranean Dogwood that is on the Fresh Cream Even Weave. This one, let's see. So why bit kits? So when I first started designing for Avlea, the very first kits I designed were 3 of these small kits. And I called them, I was like, well, I wanted to design something that was like a little bit of embroidery. So I was like, we're just going to call it a bit kit. It's a little bit of embroidery because at the time, I was just starting to bring over the special folk fabrics from Greece. And I loved them, but I didn't know how other people would like them. And I also thought that I was bringing over Mikini 30 count, Mikini 26 count, the traditional ground cloth in both white and natural. And I thought rather than you having to like commit to a huge project right out of the gate to try these fabrics, I wanted you to have like something small that you could sort of like test drive, like the different fabrics. And plus they just make these super cute little they're like little mini table runners that you can put pretty much anywhere. I always have one living on my desk. Oh, I should have brought the plant because I have a really great plant. But like this one right now, this is the Mykonos Meadow. And I have this one on my desk right now with like, I have it on my desk with like a really cool little plant from Trader Joe's that's like green and it's in a white ceramic pot. It's really pretty. Every time I look at it, it just makes me kind of smile, these super happy colors. And then this is the Bit Kit Asteria. Asteria in Greek means star. So because of that star medallion, I went ahead and named it Asteria. Now, the even weave is not a Greek fabric, but it is similar to some of the Greek folk fabrics. I started importing linen directly from the mill in Europe that makes it because I wanted to make sure that we could keep kit prices reasonable and that I could have a steady supply with consistent dye lot. So I was really worried about pricing and consistency of quality and dye lot. So I worked with the mill and have been working with them for about the last 4 months. Oh, wow, that's exciting. And when they sent me samples and things, in with it were these 25 count, what they call etamine or even weave fabrics. These are really common to folk embroidery because they're used for household items that are going to be washed and laundered and used regularly. You can wash and launder and use linen regularly too, but this is sort of a really hard working kind of fabric. The 25 count, you might be like, wait, why are you going with 25 count? Because it's kind of considered maybe among some people a beginner count. But actually what I've been hearing from a lot of you, it's interesting. It's so great to like get your emails and your feedback. It's so helpful to me as I'm designing. I would have never chosen this fabric if I hadn't been hearing from so many of you who are like, I want something I can make that's quick, or I want something that's sort of a palette cleanser for those of you who stitch a lot, like between your big, several months long project. You might want something you can like turn out really quickly. But then increasingly, I heard from those of you who were either beginners and kind of intimidated by some of the higher count fabrics, and I heard from people who were just getting older and having trouble seeing the finer count fabrics. And so I thought, win-win-win, like let's do this. So I saw this fabric and I was like, it's perfect. The other thing it allowed me to do was to create this new finish. It's not really a new finish. I've actually used it in other projects that I've done in collaborations with other companies. I did a subscription box with Yarnier a couple of years ago. We created a bookmark that had the same finish, and it's super fast and super easy. And basically all you do is you're just stitches, a solid line of stitches all around the perimeter, and then you trim the fabric, and then you just pull out the threads, and it leaves you with this really cute little fringe. And takes all of about, this one took me like less than 10 minutes. So if you want to try folk embroidery and you're like, wow, I'm a little bit intimidated by that drawn thread hem finish, I get a lot of emails about that, then it's like, this is a great way to start. With this, you at least get the experience of like pulling one thread, trimming the fabric, and then starting to pull threads. Because pulling threads feels really scary after you've stitched your beautiful little embroidery. You're like, wait, I'm going to actually take away threads? You are, and you can do this, and you've got this, and it's going to be amazing. So I did the Mykonos Meadow is on the white fabric, which I've named Mediterranean Jasmine. I was just in this kind of big naming phase when the fabrics came in. I'm like, I want to give them names. I'm tired of white and ivory and natural. And like, we have to use those names for the other fabrics, but I'm like, these guys are going to get some special names. So this one's Mediterranean Jasmine, which is the white. And then the color palette, this design is actually from an 18th century Greek folk cushion. The cushion itself, it's from a border of a cushion, and the cushion itself is actually quite a bit bigger. You could actually, I was thinking that this design would be amazing to just get a bigger piece of fabric, maybe buy like a fat quarter. Oh, it just occurred to me. Oh, wow, that like totally just occurred to me. You could buy a fat quarter and you could cut it in half, and you would end up with two pieces of fabric that were basically about 18 by 17 and 18 by 17. And you could take this design, and I would suggest starting here in the center, and work it out. And you could actually get 2 basket claws, like fuller size basket claws out of a fat quarter. That's actually really cool. I'd never thought of that. The nice thing too about the fringe finish is you need less hem allowance. In the kits, I've allowed like an extra 1.5 inches around so that like as you're putting the fabric in your hoop, you're not going to be frustrated by how close it is to the edge of your hoop or your Q-snap. But the great thing about these is if you were trying to really get as much, stitching out of those pieces of fabric, you only need 0.5 inch for the fringe finish. So that would be a really fun way to use these. So this one is from a 18th century cushion, and I went with the kind of I like to think of it as the light bright folk embroidery palette. It's got the 347, they call it salmon very dark, which I don't like that name. I think it should be coral, wonderful coral, or something like that. And then kind of a leafy green, a butter yellow, and then the antique blue series from DMC, which is a really nice, cooler blue. Anyway, so that's the Mykonos Meadow. Then, we're doing great on time. Then we have the Asteria, which was really fun for me because those of you who have followed me are like, wait, what? Did Krista just stitch on a colored fabric? Why, yes, I did. So this is on the blue even weave 25 count, and I'm calling this color Aegean Sky because again, I was just in that naming mood. This design is actually a motif that I simplified. I actually saw it in a photo of a vintage embroidery in Kalamata, Greece, and the original was this motif actually with all of it filled in, every last little bit of it, almost more like needlepoint. And then, wait for it, like taken and repeated multiple times across the table runner. I think the original, it was kind of hard to tell from the photo, but I would have guessed that the original probably had at least 3 or 4 motifs across and at least 5 or 6 long. So we're talking like, that's got to be like almost 100,000 stitches with all that fill work. And I was like, well, the motif is really cool. It kind of reminds me of like rugs. It kind of almost looks like a little rug. I kind of like that about it. And so I tried to lift out the shapes and the elements of the motif that I thought were like the most compelling. I'm not a huge fan of filling in everything on cross stitch. Like in needlepoint, everything's filled in, and I really love that texture when you've got the wool and it's like you're creating like this almost whole new fabric. But one of the things I particularly like about folk embroidery is that the floss and where you stitch is actually working in tandem with the fabric and where you don't stitch. So like you get that texture, and especially in this case, it's like a really good example. You see the color of it coming through, which I really like. So anyways, and I've been dying for years now to have something that I could stitch and accrue floss on and like have it show up, because it doesn't really show up very well. And I don't know, I have a soft spot for white work. When I was maybe 19 or 20, I decorated my whole bedroom in blue and white, and I found these old white work embroideries and I used them. And anyways, I just have a real soft spot. I've always really liked white work, which is kind of funny because like most of what I do now is like totally colorful, but I just love that kind of soft tone on tone texture of white work, white on white embroidery. So that's Asteria. And then we have Mediterranean Dogwood. This was another design that I saw. This was actually one that I saw a photograph of in Athens. And this design is actually, it's a lot of the 3 big kits, this one has the most stitching. And you can see it's these really cool 8-pointed star, dogwood motif, 8-pointed star, and then these really cool little borders on the outside, which I just love. This one's really cool too because you can see that almost all the pink stitches in the border are actually outlined in black for like greater emphasis and intricacy. It's really cool. So, but this one also originally was a huge table runner. So these borders went all the way over, and then these motifs, the 8-pointed star and the dogwood, were repeated probably like a dozen times across and probably 20 or 30 times long. So again, huge table runner that would have taken months and months and months to stitch, but I wanted to just get a little flavor of it. This one, I have a new lamp in my new little home studio here. I should have brought it. It's really pretty. It's kind of like green, and then the bottom has like this little gold, like metallic gold band on it, and I just sort of set it right there next to it. Oh, it just looks great. I love these. I kind of like these too. I kind of move them around the workshop. Like if I'm feeling like I need a little spot of color, I'll just like stick them different places. So those are the bit kits on the even weave. That's like that's the latest release, which again, if you follow the emails, you're kind of like, Krista, come on, get to the new stuff. Okay, so let's talk about what's coming up. Let's see here. Okay, so we talked about the bit kits. I'm having to check my little list here so I stay on track. Oh, what's coming up? So this next month, I've got quite a lot of fun stuff releasing. Oh my gosh, now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh, I'm probably going to have 3 releases this next month. That would be in March. So the first thing I'm going to release is the Luminita basket cloth. Now, hopefully you can see that. Isn't that cool? I found these really cool little things of like wheat sheaves at Trader Joe's, and oh my gosh, they just spoke to me. Okay, so that's it, how I have it staged for the photos. But let me take the wheat sheaves out and show you the embroidery. So this is also another one of the easy fringe finish pieces. And this is actually a basket cloth on the Aegean sky. And this one uses the same colors that are in the Bit Kit Asteria without the pop of coral. Because, wow, you guys really love your blue and white designs. And I love you for that because I love designing them. They're tons of fun. But this design, when I started designing basket cloths a couple of years ago, I started with the Antonia and the Louisa designs on traditional ground cloth. I honestly, it's so funny to me. It always surprises me which things like take off. But those, I thought, well, I'll just do these. It'll be something kind of fun and fast and easy, and they're just simple borders. Oh my gosh, you guys love those. They are so popular. I probably sell at least one of them every single week. So I think it's because it's something super practical. It's something I've been thinking a lot about with folk embroidery lately, and how much folk embroidery is like knitting. You know, I used to knit a ton. I taught knitting just on the side, and for a couple of years, I dabbled in knitwear design. And one of the things I loved the most about knitting was that you actually got to wear it and use it. Like you got to enjoy, what you made. I got that feeling last week. I actually, for the last year, I have been knitting a sweater because my stitching doesn't leave me a lot of time for knitting. But this year I was like, I want to knit something for myself. I haven't knit something for myself in years. And I knit Andrea Rangel's Halyard sweater. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I was just kind of going around the workshop all week going, don't I look awesome? Don't I look fantastic? I was like, it has this huge ribbed collar. It's a 10-inch collar. So it like folds back, and I'm like, I just look like a Scandinavian model. It was awesome. And so I was like, that's what I love about folk embroidery, is that you can actually use this stuff. I mean, I always have a stitched piece on my desk. I've got table runners on my console tables. I've got cushions on my couch. Like, you get to actually really use it afterwards. It doesn't just get like framed and hung on the wall. Although, wall hangings are great too. Okay, that's funny. I should say that because in a minute I'll tell you about a cool wall hanging project I'm working on. That's a fun, interesting collaboration. So anyways, the basket cloths have been really popular. And basically I wanted one that somebody could do without a drawn thread hem finish. So that if you didn't want to have to do it that way, you didn't have to take that on. You had an easy option. And so this is the Luminita design. It is inspired by a Romanian embroidery from a vintage Romanian pattern. And it's got this, it really is visually, it's got a lot of visual impact, but these stars have this little tiny border connecting them. And then that border is repeated in the center. And Luminita means little light in Romanian, and it's a Romanian girl's name. And I just loved it. I've had it on my names list for years, and I've been just waiting to bring that one out. And I just thought with like the little sparkly stars, it just kind of was really cool. And this, actually the great thing about this, you can put it in a basket, and you can wow, isn't that going to look snazzy when you bring your, loaf of sourdough bread to the table? And the great thing about them is they're totally washable. I tested these fabrics, even with the fringe finish. I thought I'm going to wash them and the fringe is going to get all wonky. Like that's just what's going to happen. And my beautiful idea is going to just go up in smoke, or I guess go away in water in the washing machine. But it didn't. The fringe actually is just fine. It comes through the washing machine just fine. And I didn't even really, I mean, you could iron it, but I kind of like the rustic look of like, you can just have it without ironing it. So pretty easy to use and care for kind of piece. I also thought the blue would be really forgiving. Any sort of stain or things like that are going to show up less on a blue fabric, on a colored fabric. So that's Luminita coming very soon. Probably will release, that'll probably be the March release. Then the next one, I absolutely love this design. It was one of my favorite things I stitched this last year. And I am having so much trouble getting the photos right. I have done 3 different photo shoots of this, and I just feel like I'm not getting it quite right. And it might just be that I'm too close to it, and I love it so much that I want the photos to literally be like amazing. So I'm going to go through my photos again. I may have to edit them again, but this is, okay, working title. I may even change the name. Right now I'm calling it Poxy Posie because Poxy is an island in the Greek islands, and these sorts of designs come from cushion covers from the Greek islands. I love this design for so many reasons. First off, it's really gorgeous, and it's just a classic example of the stylized flowers that are used in Greek folk embroidery. I love that. I love that it has these little, let's see if I can point them out, the little gold urns. I love the little Greek urns. It's just like a little nod. I just love that little tiny urn motif. And I love how it took me a long time to play around with the colors on this to get them exactly right. The original was done all just with 2 shades of one color. And I wanted to work in more colors. And so I added the blue, but then I had to play around with how I was going to alternate the dark blue, the light blue, and then the dark terracotta and the light alizarin, and like intermix those. So it took actually quite a bit of trial and error for me to get this one right. And then the design is so wonderful and floral, but I had seen this border, this little checkerboard kind of, it's not really a checkerboard, it's more almost like little tiny, they're like little lines worked in colors, this border. And once I saw that, I was like, I played around with it. I tried the kind of classic checkerboard border where you alternate like a stitch of blue and then a stitch of light blue and a stitch of terracotta and a stitch of alizarin. It didn't really work. Nothing really worked. And a big surprise to me was how the design just totally came together as soon as I put solid lines on the outside. It was like it really needed to be bordered by this whole design. And then to bring those colors outward, it's almost a little bit of kind of like a little rainbow effect, which I just love. So I just love this piece. I've actually had it on my coffee table with a plant, and every time I look at it, I'm like, please let me photograph you and show how amazing you are. So I'm going to go back and look over the photos again. Part of the reason I'm having trouble with the photos is I'm kind of having to learn how to work with light all over again because I'm in Central Oregon now. And there's so much of it. So most of what I'm dealing with is things being overexposed or having too much light, which, having done most of my photography in the Willamette Valley, is an entirely new thing for me to deal with. So I'm learning. But yeah, so basically as soon as I have good photos, this is going to be a March release. I definitely want to release this in March. So this is going to be Poxy Posie. So that's a great design. And then the next design, coming up, which will either, I don't know, I'll probably release Luminita and Poxy Posie in March. And then I will probably release this next one in April, unless I get impatient and want to release it sooner. But those of you who have kind of been with me from the very beginning, you may remember some of my very, very early designs. Basically, I saw pictures in Greece, and I started creating things based off of pictures. I actually was just working with like a picture in like graph paper and my kids' Prismacolor pencils, like making charts before I realized there was such a thing as charting software. And so some of those older designs, I was working pretty close to the original because I was trying to like understand the design, and I was just making something for my own home. And one of those designs was a design that originally I released as a design called Hermione Floral in Diamond. Have I learned a lot about naming since then? Why, yes, I have. Hermione Floral in Diamond is a terrible name. And so, but it's an awesome design. But I realized I had not realized how popular the Harry Potter series was when I used the name Hermione, because I'm thinking of it as a Greek name, but everyone else is thinking of it as a Harry Potter name. And then Floral in Diamond is just weird. So I've learned a lot about naming. And some of those older designs, I just was like, okay, maybe I just need to like kind of put them by the wayside and, you know, be grateful that I've learned from them and kind of move on. But this design is one that just sort of like, it's just always spoke to me. It's always kind of called to me, and I've just really loved this design. I do not, to be honest, I don't love this colorway. But it was what the like original vintage, the photo that I had, it was how it was worked. And so I was like, okay, I want to learn how this works and I'm going to do it that way. And I also didn't know enough to like leave enough to like do a drawn thread hem finish. So I just did like this simple little fold over finish, which you do see a lot in Greece. And I mean, the thing is just covered in stitches. It took me months and months and months and months to do this little tiny table runner. And so this past summer, I went back over this design and I'm like, wait, I want to pull out, this is such a strong motif. I love the diamond effect. I love the little buds that are in each one. I just love this motif and I want to see if I can give it new life. So what I did is I started playing around with it and I developed a new design from it that we're going to call Chloe. And that's this design. So actually, I don't know if I can hold both of them up side by side. It's the same flower. Oh, let me get that closer. That's not going to work. So it's the same core motif, but what I did is I opened it way up. I worked it on 30 count vanilla linen. I changed the color palette to be more of a blue and green and gold color palette that I really like. And then what I did is I left out a bunch of stitches and I also emphasized, I turned it into a basically centered border design. Let me try and hold it this way. I basically turned it into a center border design by emphasizing, by leaving these diamonds unworked and working rows of just straight rows of stitching to kind of emphasize that. I am going to finish this as a cushion cover because I have a chair that I want to put it in. But it would also be an amazing table runner. It'd be a really great table runner design. I could totally see that as a table runner design. Anyways, so this is a really great example of a lot of kind of how I work. I like to take the old designs and really understand them stitch by stitch. And then when I can, I like to create something kind of new, an adaptation from it. Because these designs end up looking very different when you hold them up side by side. But that core motif is the same. You have the same floret and the same little buds. And the reason I'm calling it Chloe, much better name, is because of these little green buds. There are these little tiny green buds. And in Greek, the girl's name Chloe means little green shoot, little green growing thing. And so Chloe is going to be coming out very soon. Now that I look at all this, I'm thinking probably April, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll get impatient and release it in March. But this one's coming. And given that so many of you have liked the Aegean Arbor design that I did, which is like a centered band table runner design in a very similar color palette, I decided to do one more design in that color palette so that if you were trying to do coordinating table runners or coordinating cushion covers, you'd have options. So this one, you could combine this with the Aegean Arbor, and make cushions that would like coordinate in color and kind of like overall design. They would have harmony between them. So that is Chloe, which is coming soon. I will do a little short finishing video too when I do this. I thought it's time. In fact, I might even, if I have time, I'd really like to use it to completely redo a new how to finish a cushion, how to finish your embroidery into a cushion cover video. Because I have better light now and I just have learned a lot about doing those kind of how-to videos. So I'll probably use this as an opportunity to swap that out. So that's all the new stuff coming. That is, and then the other new stuff, okay, in the works. Let's move on. So we've talked about what released, what's coming up. And then the last thing I'll just talk to you about, because it's really exciting. I feel like the minute I got my workshop organized and everything put away and all the totes labeled, it was like suddenly the universe heard. I was like, she's ready to design. The other thing that I did that was really counterintuitive was in the middle of all the busyness of moving and getting my kid to a new school, and we're wrapping up the renovation work on our old house, and like, I mean, this has been the busiest season of my life since I was in my early 40s and I had a toddler and my dad was really sick. So like that's saying a lot, because that was a really busy season too. So it's just one of those, but those of you, we all know that these busy seasons come and go. But in this season, I thought, I'm going to learn from when I was younger and when I was in busy seasons, and I just set my creativity aside. I let everything else come in and fill those spaces. And I did not boundary my creative time. And I realized, I thought this time, no matter what, I am boundarying my creative time. So what that meant for me is I set aside one day a week that is my design day. And I told my family, figure out dinner, figure out meals, all the things. I'm unavailable. And I don't check my email, or I check it like once in the morning, and then I'm just offline. And I blocked out this like big chunk of time on one day a week to just design, because I feel like my design work is, of course, the thing I love the most. And I need to do a lot of it to stay fluid and to keep adding to my skills. I'm constantly learning new things. I feel like every time I sit down to design, I learn something new. And so it was so funny. Like, as soon as and I did that like a month ago. A month ago, I was like, okay, moving boxes are unpacked. This is it. I'm boundarying this time, and nothing is interfering with this. And as soon as I did that, it was like the universe heard. And I got chosen to be the pinwist designer, and I had been working on my design and fighting with my design and the color palette. And then, as soon as I had days, just a whole day to like work through the design, and then I knew I had another day the next week and another day the next week, the design just totally came together. And I'm actually doing a design for the Pacific Northwest Stitch Summit. I'm one of the featured designers in this coming September. That is a stitching retreat in Portland, Oregon. It is in person and has a Zoom component. And I was so excited with my design. I am doing an ode to Arakova, Greece. I visited Arakova when I was in Greece a few months ago, and it's just this amazing mountain village that has a lot. Textiles are literally interwoven into daily life. They wove rugs there. They have a very distinctive style of folk costume. Textiles are so important there that even in all around, there's a really famous church, the Church of St. George. You have to climb up like 150 steps to go up to it. And the church courtyard has this huge courtyard, which you can like look down and see all the mountains. It's just stunningly beautiful. All around the church courtyard are these huge stone plaques that are stamped with textile designs. This still my beating heart. I was like, what? I came up the stairs and saw the first one and thought, this is so cool. Then I started walking around the courtyard. There's like a dozen of them around the courtyard. I took photos. There will be patterns that are coming from those designs because it was just so cool. This is how valued textiles are in this community, that the textile tradition has actually creatively influenced their stonework tradition. Even as I was going up the stairs to go up there are some of the stairs are set with mosaics that are all done with rug motifs. So it's just like so cool. So I was just really creatively inspired there. And I wanted to do a design that was an ode to Arakova. And so it's a design that is going to actually be either, you can finish it as a table runner or a wall hanging. I cannot show you anything yet, but it features, I will tell you, it features very intricate medallions as well as some pretty nifty borders. And it's from a hand-drawn vintage chart that I saw in the Folk Costume Museum there. Just this little pencil chart that I saw that I was really taken with. And I kind of built the design based on a little tiny fragment, this fragment of a chart. So anyways, very exciting. And then, if that wasn't great enough, for those of you who sew, you may be familiar with the name folkwear sewing patterns. Allow me to fangirl for a moment. Oh my gosh, I just love folkwear sewing patterns. They have been in business for over 50 years. They were started by a bunch of hippies in the 70s, and they create these sewing patterns that are inspired by traditional garments and folk costume from different historical garment periods. When I was in my early 20s, the sewing project I was most proud of was actually making their Edwardian dress. And so really, really cool. Very textile nerdy in the most wonderful way. Well, over the last year, I've gotten to know Molly, who's the current owner, and she's out of North Carolina, and we've talked quite a bit because we have these shared interests in folk costume and traditional costume and embroidery and textiles. Well, a couple of weeks ago, she came to me and said, we are working on a Norwegian bunad costume, folk costume pattern. Would you be interested in doing the embroidery charting for us? And I was like, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. I was so excited. I dove into bunad work. I went off the deep end, and I just spent days and days researching bunad work. My family is very up to speed on bunad work now. But what's really cool about Norwegian folk costume, it's also really interesting to me to see, as soon as I got in, I'm like, oh, they do the shirt neck plackets just like Ukrainian vyshyvankas or Romanian blouses, or the sleeve, the adding onto the sleeves is similar to a Greek folk costume, or they use red wool. Well, red wool is used in some of the folk costumes of Arakova, Greece. So it's there's all of these connections that you see while things are still distinctive within regions. But what is really interesting about bunad work is that they combine surface embroidery and cross stitch. So in the front of the garment, there is this chest insert in some variations of bunad folk costume, usually in the Telemark region, for those of you who want to know, where they do this very distinctive cross-stitch section that is done with an 8-pointed star. And I got in and did research, and I actually was so excited with the project, I ended up creating not one, but 2 patterns. So that will be a pattern that we're going to have to release basically as a chart. It'll have a chart as the cover image of the pattern to begin with. But and because Folkwares is going to be using it with their bunad costume pattern, I think it will either be an add-on or it'll come with the pattern. Then I'll also be offering it at the Avlea website. The pattern will also come with rose malling embroidery, surface embroidery designs. Right now, I think it'll come with 5 designs. And these are little sprays of flowers that can be used for auxiliary items, accessories like purses, or be used on sleeves, or can be embroidered. And it'll be designed so that you can basically print the PDF to stick and stitch paper and use it that way, or you can trace it onto the fabric. But the design, we're calling them Scandinavian Sampler 1 and Scandinavian Sampler 2. Each pattern will have all the rose malling, 5 rose malling motifs, along with a cross-stitch chart featuring a central all-over design and several borders. So it really is kind of this sampler idea. And I'm kind of playing around with right now the idea of turning it into a wall hanging, kind of an ode to Norwegian embroidery wall hanging, because I think it could be really cool. What I'm trying to play around with right now is how I could do the cross-stitch section in the middle and then piece on pieces of linen to be able to do the surface embroidery, the rose malling embroidery. I haven't quite figured it out, but that's kind of what I have in mind right now. So that's what's going on. And then in addition to those collaborations, the next things kind of up on my design board are designing new patterns for the 2 new fabrics that I haven't yet. They're available by the yard, in the fabric section on the website, but they're not. I haven't designed specifically for them yet. And the first is the Ashwood 30 count. This is the same linen as our vanilla or our porcelain 30 count, but this is this really awesome kind of taupey color with black undertones. Oh, I cannot wait to stitch this. I am thinking right now that I may use this to do a smaller re-release of the Byzantine rose border design, because that's been such a popular design. But it was such an early design that I did that I don't have great sample photos. So it needs new photos and a new sample. So I may just do that because it's a really great design. May do something new. And then the other one is the flax. It's a 28 count flax, which I'm envisioning doing maybe as a basket cloth, or it's got this lovely rustic quality to it that I really like. So I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with it yet. But those are the next 2 that are up on my design board. wow, and here I thought I wasn't going to have that much to share with you today. So that is kind of what's going on. As I mentioned before, if you want to get a weekly update of kind of where I'm at creatively, you can sign up for the emails. And I just want to thank you for your support. I would not be here doing this work if you all weren't buying patterns and kits. And I am so grateful for that. And I'm particularly grateful for all of your referrals, because I can see new people coming in, and I know it's because you guys are sharing about folk embroidery. And I am so grateful. I just feel like every time I have to thank you guys for that, because I get to do this amazing work, and I get to live in the favorite place in my brain, which is like all folk embroidery all the time, because of your support and your generosity and your enthusiasm. And I'm just, so I don't feel like I'm here doing this all on my own. I feel like I am just sort of like doing the work, and we're all sharing it, and we get to share all of this amazing work. And I love seeing you post your projects. You'll notice that when somebody does that, I almost always put that in the stories of Instagram stories. I love seeing what you guys are creating. So that gives me so much joy. So I want to thank you. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for supporting Avlea and supporting my design work. I truly appreciate it. And happy stitching. Till next month.